So this week, when it comes to the lore of Rainbow Six Siege, we have covered the map Yacht. And when digging, I found so many different Easter eggs, from the number 23, the posters on the wall leading back to Hamburg, Germany, the fact that there's a connection between Yacht and Canal because the viewers pointed that out, which was awesome. And the Charlottetown connection not only to Newfoundland, but also to the actual ship. Which in the end, when I was doing my research, really put a focus on a certain battle called the Battle of St. Lawrence. Now this was a branch off of the Battle of Atlantic, but I think that I want to focus more on the Battle of the St. Lawrence, not only because of the Charlottetown connection, but because of the Quebec connection, the fact that the Battle of the Atlantic covered, well, obviously the Atlantic, but this covers the battle in Canada, and seeing as Yacht is in Canada, I thought it'd make more sense to cover the Battle of the St. Lawrence in particular. And on that note, let's get into the Battle of the St. Lawrence, which I think possibly inspired Yacht on Rainbow Six Siege. Now, as I stated earlier, the Battle of St. Lawrence is a branch off of the Battle of Atlantic, which was a German campaign during the Second World War. And basically their focus was to disrupt shipping between North America and the United Kingdom. And this happened between 1942 and 1944, where German submarines, known as U-boats, repeatedly penetrated the waters of the St. Lawrence and the Gulf, sinking 23 ships and costing hundreds of lives. And it was the first time since the War of 1812 that naval battles waged in Canadian inland waters. Battle of St. Lawrence ended up happening because the Canadians knew they had to make a choice. And they already chose to support the war effort, and the ports along the St. River were a key component to this, including cities like Montreal, sorry, kind of had to point that one out, and Quebec City. These supplies would then be pushed from those cities and moved up to Halifax and Sydney, to then be able to be prepared to go overseas. Now on March 25th, 1942, the Prime Minister at the time, William Mackenzie, noted and knew that it wasn't long before the Germans and their submarines were going to try to penetrate Canadian waters, in hopes to destroy the convoy ships that were being shipped over to support, obviously not the Germans, in the war. So to help protect the shipping in the St. Lawrence, the Navy opened a new base called Fort Ramsey in Quebec on May 1st, 1942. The base only had one small vessel and no aircraft, a present that just days later would prove very inadequate. As the first German submarine, the U-553, entered the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and in the late evening hours of May 11th, it attacked its first target off the north shore of this Quebec peninsula. A British merchant ship was en route from Montreal to join a convoy in Halifax, when, at 11:52 p.m., it was struck by a torpedo 19 minutes later. As the crew was evacuating the ship, it was hit by a second torpedo. 6 crewmen lost their lives. And a mere 2 hours later, that same German submarine attacked another vessel and ended up killing 12 of the 43 crew members as it almost sank immediately. The next attacks came several weeks after the sinking of that last vessel. In the early morning hours of July 6, 1942, another German submarine hunted down a convoy of 12 vessels en route from Quebec to Sydney, Nova Scotia, torpedoing and sinking 3 vessels. This struck fear in the Canadians' hearts at this time because it was a full realization that this war was now at their doorstep. And there was immense pressure on the Prime Minister and the politicians to make sure that they brought safety home, because a lot of their ships at this time are obviously dispersed in different areas. So bowing to that pressure, because Canadians were freaking out a little bit. Can't say I blame them. And several Navy vessels were actually brought back from the Atlantic to protect these convoys in the St. Lawrence. I think that's why I find it a little fascinating. If you're on Yacht and you actually scope out, you'll see what looks like a Canadian warship just sitting out there. Just a little point out. Anyways, back to the story. So once they had reinforcements in trying to help protect these convoy vessels for their shipments, the carnage was reduced, but that didn't obviously stop the submarines, and they constantly were coming in for attacks. On September 6, 1942, a convoy of 8 merchant vessels and 5 escorts was attacked. 2 vessels were sunk, including an armed yacht Raccoon, which was an escort duty. All 38 naval crew on board were killed. The next day, a different submarine ended up sinking 3 more freighters and killing 10 more people. And 2 days later, on September 9th, the federal government actually shut down the St. Lawrence to overseas shipping. Interesting enough, most actually took this shutdown as kind of a defeat. But what a lot of people didn't know was at this time they were actually diverting ships to help with a secret mission in the Mediterranean. So, the Germans think in that moment thought they had a heads up, but they ended up losing it in the end. But even though on September 9th, the overseas shipping was stopped, obviously at this point, I don't think there was a lot of communication between the Germans, the Canadians, the war thing. So unfortunately, on September 11th, the warship Charlottetown was torpedoed and sank 11 kilometers off of the peninsula in Quebec. From all the records that I can find, she went down hard and she went down fast, and 9 crew members died. Now, I particularly find Charlottetown interesting for the fact that she actually was a warship, not just a shipping vessel full of supplies. And also the fact that Charlottetown is seen in yacht quite a bit. Now, because of what looked like a retreat on the Canadians' part, the German submarines didn't attack the shipping aspect of the St. Lawrence again until 1944. It's documented only, I think, 2 submarines came into Canadian waters in 1943, but it was seen as they were trying to get their prisoners of war, which they were unsuccessful. By 1944, the Allies' demand for supplies increased significantly. However, advances in intelligence and communication allowed them to better track the Germans in the Atlantic. Allied intelligence intercepted messages indicating that German boats were once again headed towards the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. This time, with the information though, the military aggressively tracked the submarines with aerial and naval patrols and forced them basically to remain submerged much of the time, presumably saving hundreds of lives, as in the year 1944, only 3 more ships were sunk by the time the battle had ended. And in the end, more than 440 convoys, numbering some 2,200 ships, fulfilled their mission to transport crucial supplies for the war effort overseas. And the bodies of many of those killed that were lost forever at sea, their names and sacrifices are honored at the Halifax Memorial in City Point Pleasant Park. And may we never forget the soldiers, the men, the women, the children that lost their lives in the Battle of the St. Lawrence. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit of the history behind the Battle of St. Lawrence when it comes to the lore of Yacht and Rainbow Six Siege. I really enjoyed this week. Love actually just every week, if I'm being completely honest, because I learned so much about history that I really didn't know before. So I know I personally enjoyed anyways. But on that note, I'm going to end this video here. As always, I hope you guys are having a fabulous weekend, and yeah, until the next time. Bye!